an attitudinal change coming from the government down to the public, then a future pandemic similar to coronavirus will likely have a more significant impact than even coronavirus has had over the past 10, 11 months. We go down to public health and COVID-19 slide here. First point I want to make is that COVID has had a collateral impact on the care of other patients with some of the major health conditions. So one bullet point here, for example, to highlight this, there's not a lot of research on there's not a lot of published research on hospital admissions by condition in Wales so far this year. When I say this year, I mean this financial year from April onwards. But in England, there has been published research indicating that there's been a significant fall in hospital admissions for the 7 major non-coronavirus conditions at the start of the pandemic. So that's March to June 2020. Those hospital admissions fell by 173,000. The majority of those admissions would have been for the treatment of cancer patients. So it's very likely that the major conditions, strokes, diabetes, dementia, mental health, eating disorders, people who unfortunately have to live with those conditions and will not have been able to have the treatment they could have expected to have this year. Their conditions are likely to get worse without treatment over the next few months or year, and therefore the knock-on impact on our health service could be quite significant. The knock-on impact on those individuals' future health could also be quite significant. We expect that the impact of loneliness and mental health suffering has grown during the pandemic, and there is a relationship between income inequality and poor mental health. It's a case that people who suffer from poor mental health are disproportionately affected during periods of social immobility where they aren't able to interact with friends, family, work colleagues. And the same group of people are also disproportionately affected during periods of an economic downturn. There wasn't a lot of actual published research to show a link between a depressive economic period and an increase in mental health suffering. But I did dig out some research published by World Psychiatry a couple of years ago, which certainly indicates that there's a relationship between those two. So after the economic downturn in 2008, there was an increase in the numbers of people who had been admitted to primary care for mental health issues. Whether one caused the other is not completely known yet in terms of the research, but we can, worst case scenario, we can surmise that there is certainly some kind of link between the two. So I would expect that over the next year or two, we will likely see an increase in those suffering from mental health conditions. It may be an increase in the numbers of people suffering from mental health conditions. That's possible. But what's pretty certain is that those people who already pre-COVID suffered from some form of mental illness, whether that be depression or stress or different levels of anxiety, those individuals will have been disproportionately affected over the course of the last 9-10 months because of the lack of social interaction, the lack of all sorts of support that they would ordinarily receive from friends, family, and colleagues. So if we now have a look at the impact that COVID has had on our economy, it's not yet known really what the long-term effect of COVID is going to have on the Welsh economy. I don't think we're currently in a position where we know what our budget spend available to us is as a Welsh government. So the longer-term economic effects of COVID are highly uncertain. However, Office of Budget Responsibility has projected that Welsh GDP could fall by 13% 2020, may not rise again to pre-pandemic levels until next year, 2022. That research was published last year, 2020 now, and obviously it looks like businesses are going to be adversely affected by the impact of COVID for quite a lot of 2021. So that return to pre-pandemic levels of GDP may go beyond 2022. COVID's influence on shutting down businesses has disproportionately affected the younger workforce, women, and those in the lowest earning groups of Welsh workers. If I go down to the bottom bullet point there, half of the lowest earners in Wales worked in shutdown sectors of the economy. And this made them 10 times more likely to have been affected by the shutdown compared with the highest earning group. And this shutdown I'm referring to, this lockdown, is the first one. So this is going back to March this year. If we think that that group of people, half of the lowest earners in Wales, were so disproportionately affected because of the first lockdown, they will not have been able to recover by the time that we've had further local lockdowns or national lockdowns, such as the one that we're going through now. So the effect on that group of society economically is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse, unfortunately. Which is why there's obviously the need to increase the national spend on welfare provision. And what we've seen in terms of the spend over the past few months is going to continue. The effect that will have on Welsh GDP long term, again, is unknown. Excuse me. If I go back down to the final little section here, though, in the Future Trends report that you'd have seen last year, we talked a lot about the fourth industrial revolution being the digital revolution, and we are currently going through that, and the speed of change driven by digital technology is only going to increase over the next few years. Well, part of that change was we foresaw that there was going to be a likelihood in more upskilling and retraining because of changes to the job sector within Wales and across the UK as a whole. COVID will likely speed up that requirement for upskilling and retraining. Whether that can be seen as a positive or not, probably not for the people who are currently unable to work and are being told to upskill and retrain in other sectors. But we are likely to see investment in upskilling and retraining programs this year. So I'm just going to go down to the next slide. Commuting, connectivity, schools and social interaction. We know that with our organisation is a very good example. Sarah and Sally highlighted again just now about limited numbers of people in headquarters, for example. So more and more of our organisation are working from home. They have the provision to work from home now. They've got the technology to work from home. The Welsh Government has published a long-term aim for 30% of the Welsh workforce to be able to work from home or very close to where they live. They haven't set a date for when they want to reach that target of 30%. During the first lockdown, 45% of the Welsh workforce worked all or some of the time from home. This was actually less than the UK average, but that's probably more to do with the fact that Wales has the lowest potential share of jobs that can be done from home of any of the UK nations. But that said, we will likely see changes in working habits. More people will be working from home for at least part of their working week in the future. And that leads on to changes in commuting, fewer cars on the road, fewer individual commutes that people do. That will have an impact on climate change, potentially. We'll see. I've got a note about that in the final slide. It certainly has an effect on the incident types that our crews attend. So I don't have the numbers to hand in front of me right now, but the one area where we have seen significant changes this year compared to previous years is a reduction in road traffic collisions, primarily because there are fewer cars on the road this year. And even though we may not go back in the future to the number of cars that we've seen on the road this year, we may not go down to those low levels, it is likely that peak periods of the day, your 9 o'clock commutes, your 5 o'clock commutes, will be less congested, fewer cars on the road during those commutes, which will have a positive knock-on effect of reducing the number of RTCs that our crews attend. That was a bit of a sideline. If I go back to the themes around connectivity, access to digital technology has been a massive talking point, specifically access for pupils, primary and secondary school pupils, enabling them to homeschool. The lack of access to digital technology for those who are socially disadvantaged will have disproportionately affected those people since the pandemic started. And we, despite the UK government rolling out laptops to schools, still not enough. There aren't enough devices to adequately cover all pupils in all schools. Interestingly, it looks like Wales has performed better than other UK nations with the provision of devices for homeschooling for pupils. But it may have performed better than Scotland, Northern Ireland and England in the provision of technology, but it's still hasn't been able to provide devices to all pupils that need devices. And that still means that the pupils who don't have devices, generally, they do come from lower income families and are the most come from the most disadvantaged sectors of society, which means that the digital divide, at least in the short term, will expand between the haves and the have-nots. We are likely to see changes, certainly through this year, changes within our schools as schools reopen, whenever that might be. It's likely that we will see changes in class size, so class sizes will be smaller, and there may be a requirement to have more spaces available to perform physical classes in. So that could mean that different rooms, different buildings are being used, and additional safety assessments would then be required on those spaces. So if we move down to the last slide in this report, the effect that COVID-19 has had on climate change. I'm sure many of you would have been aware in the first couple of months of lockdown, there were reports that because industry had slowed down and there were fewer cars on the road, that's going to have a very large, significant positive impact on climate and on future climate change. And it's true that CO2 emissions did fall during the first few months of the pandemic. But it's also true, unfortunately, that despite global CO2 emissions falling, that has not made a significant positive impact on long-term climate change. United in Science 2020, a multi-organizational NGO who are on top of the latest research and scientific evidence for climate change, continue to promote the message that there are still irreversible climate change impacts on our on us, and that a short-term reduction in CO2 emissions from industry shutting down or fewer cars on the road has not really made a long-term dent in those irreversible climate change trends. And that sums up what we've been able to identify so far. Again, got to caveat this information quite strongly with the fact that we are still going through the impacts of coronavirus, and therefore, there's I'm sure over time more and more published research will become available to us to revisit what we've done so far and identify some more specific medium to long-term trends that we can see from additional research as and when it's published. But obviously, as we're still going through coronavirus now, we don't have that to hand as yet. That's the report. Any questions that any of the councillors here have?
Only a comment, Chairman, from Monmouthshire. We have dreadful access to broadband and various other things within my ward, and that's killing off initiative, to put it mildly. I found it a very interesting report, and thank you very much. I always tend to think of ageing populations. From the moment you're born, you're ageing. I've reached the other extremis, but no, thank you very much indeed for your report.
I think Councillor Brown's indicated, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
I think it was a very good report, and I'm just wondering whether this is something that should be referred to the different public service boards in the different local authorities within, the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service area. But I think it also, in terms of future trends, from a sort of a multi-agency perspective, it also needs an action plan as well, but I don't think it's necessarily an action plan just for the fire authority. It's a cross-cutting across all of the public service areas, and so I think it would be very useful. I mean, it brings up so many different issues, and comes across as quite grim reading in many respects, because of the impact on low-paid workers, obesity, the isolation, and so forth, and all these trends that have been brought up. But I think it does need across a public service action plan to deal with it, and I think that will be the best way for it to go, because obviously you've done a lot of research. I'm concerned that, the public health side has done the research in terms of missing operations and that impact, and Wales hasn't done the same thing, because I know I'm on a community engagement thing for our local health board, and when they do these Facebook things, people are basically putting in comments about missed hip operations being cancelled, and cataracts and all these other issues that will cause future problems as well. So it's not just the economy, but then there's so many other issues that it brings up. Like food production through local farms and things like that, because of the food shortages, particularly for the lower paid workers and those who've really suffered at the moment.
Chair, can I suggest on that one? Adam and John don't know it yet, but they've been booked into the February SMT Planning Day meeting to give this update presentation to our senior management team. So I would suggest after that's happened, then we can roll this out to the relevant group managers who attend the public service boards. I know some of the public service boards have stalled meeting at the moment due to COVID, but once those kick back off, we can then filter this information down.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
Can I come back again?
Yeah, go on, Val. You come in before me.
Yeah, it's a good. Yeah, it's a really good report. It's a good report. It draws things together, and in the nicest way possible. It is common sense all the way through, isn't it? You read this report and think, well, common sense. This is going to impact in that way. That is going to impact in the other way. I'm aware of sort of waste within, not with the fire authority, within other services, and it annoys me intensely. Common sense has gone out of the window when it can send a team out sort of 10 miles to give my husband a COVID test and ignore me, which seems incredible. But then a bit of common sense on Saturday, taking husband for COVID jab, and common sense prevailed there. And that was an interesting thing. Is do you want one of these? Oh, well, I never turn down a good offer, do I? Mind you, it feels as if you're poleaxed afterwards. But common sense is within this report, and thank you, gentlemen, for it. I think it's worthy of going elsewhere, as well as our senior management team, within our local authorities. It's reasonable, it's readable, and it's manageable. So thank you, Chairman. I'll stop shutting you up, sir.
No, what I meant to say when I was muted is what Val had already said. I reckon it's a very, very good report. But as you can appreciate, there are a lot of it's from unknown because we haven't got all the statistics in yet. That's the most difficult part because it's been an ever-changing process week on week. So I think we're still waiting for a lot of information to come in, really. but the report is excellent, I thought. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, I think it would be useful to also, as well as the public service boards, to, I'm not quite sure because I don't get a lot of involvement with them, but I certainly think you need to have the health boards involved as well, because obviously, you know, you're mentioning about obesity levels and missed operations and loneliness and isolation, and the health boards are one of the few areas that haven't have tended to be better funded than the local authorities. So I think it would be very useful to have them on board as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So, any other questions? No? No? Well, the recommendation is members retain the Future Trends 2019 report and updated 2020 report to assist in future plan and decision making. That future trends are monitored and updated where necessary, the frequency of which being partially dependent on new third-party research, as well as continue to monitor fire and rescue incident type trends. So is everybody happy with that?
Chair, as this isn't a note report, can I go through each member in turn for voting, please?
No problem, sir.
Okay, Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Jarvie?
In favour.
Councillor Norton? Councillor Norton? We'll come back to Councillor Norton. I can see him there. Councillor Roberts? Councillor Roberts? She's not there. Councillor Shaw?
In favour.
I think Councillor Roberts left, Chair.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Councillor Smith?
Support.
Councillor Spencer?
In favour.
Councillor Thomas?
In favour.
Councillor Williams?
In favour.
And Councillor Norton?
Yes, I'm in favour.
Thank you.
So there we
Okay.
are. Thank you for that, everyone. That was a very good report. If we can move on to item 9, then is proposed new terms of reference for Scrutiny Committee, page 119.
Yep. Thank you,
Can we
Chairman.
run that, sir? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, by way of background, to remind members, obviously at the last meeting, they had a report on proposed options for reforming scrutiny for the Fire and Rescue Authority. Members opted for option 4 at that meeting, so there's a need to obviously rejig the terms of reference to reflect the changes highlighted within the reports. Attached at Appendix 1, page 121 of your agenda, is some proposed draft terms of reference for scrutiny. There are a couple of grammatical errors that will be obviously corrected prior to these being submitted to Fire Authority. You'll note the purpose of the committee has been kept generally quite wide to enable scrutiny of a wide remit for the authority, in contrast to the current terms of reference, which are quite a narrow, bespoke remit linked to just finance audit issues. To pick up on the issue of good practice of, wherever possible, people not scrutinising decisions that they've been a party to taking, tried to include within the composition of the committee that the committee will comprise a set number of Fire and Rescue Authority members that won't sit on either the Finance Committee or the HR Committee, and neither will the chairs of each of those committees or the authority be able to sit on the Scrutiny Committee, as they could be called to provide evidence from decisions of their committees at the Scrutiny Committee. I haven't fully worked out yet the exact number of members that will have to be to enable changes to the HR committee and the finance committee as well, but I will certainly be doing that if members are happy with the proposed direction of travel. I've also tried to incorporate, and I appreciate this could be difficult depending on the composition of the fire authority at any point in time, that the membership of the committee contains a level of diversity where that's humanly possible. But I appreciate we seek to achieve some diversity on all of our committees, so we have to take that into account. Given some fairly broad areas of specific responsibility, so reviewing, monitoring and challenging decisions, actions, plans, policies, local area, interest area, public interest areas, decisions by partners that might impact upon us, and also highlighted again in broad terms some of the responsibilities that the committee should take into account when considering and scrutinising those particular areas. And it's proposed that, similar to the current setup, that the committee will discharge its responsibilities through the delivery of a forward work programme, but to try and assist in ensuring that there's scrutiny in the correct areas, that there are 5 particular areas that the Scrutiny Committee must look at in each municipal year. So 1 Fire and Rescue Authority specific themed review, 1 community interest themed review. So that could be, for example, environmental issues or levels of service delivery, something along those lines. 1 performance review, 1 plan, policy or procedure review, and 1 governance framework review. Still kept the provisions in that where members require the attendance of an officer, chair of the committee, or potentially someone with specific expertise in a particular area, that's still possible. And also the co-option of a non-voting member wherever particular skills are identified as being required for a particular area of scrutiny. And then also finally for the committee to undertake an annual review of the recommendations that they've made to committees and the fire authority and how those have been dealt with, to try and close the loop on the evaluation of the effectiveness of the scrutiny. It's appreciated, being all Fire and Rescue Authority members, it is going to be impossible to ensure where a fire authority decision or action is being considered that members haven't previously been involved in it, but obviously we'll just have to try and undertake that level of scrutiny in the most independent manner possible given the circumstances. These are in draft form. Happy to take members' comments, additions, deletions.
Councillor Shaw wants a question if you're waiting. No.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sally. Yeah, the terms of reference look fine. I did look at, well, my first assumption was that the members of this scrutiny committee would be the obvious choice for the new scrutiny committee with a widened role, if you like. But looking at the prerequisites, that it shouldn't be a chair or deputy chair or a member of FAPM or HR Equalities, don't know about standards of pension board. If you included those 2 as well, there is no member who could sit on that committee.
Yeah, I think that's why I've included for a set number for that committee. And what I need to do is work out the knock-on implications that's going to have for HR Inequalities and Finance Audit Committee. So if we stick at Finance Audit at 10 members, it may be that we need to bring HR and Equalities Committee down to 10 members as well. I haven't quite worked it through yet, to ensure that we have enough members to undertake that scrutiny role.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't stop someone sitting on both the Finance and the HR and Equalities Committee, but they then couldn't sit on the Scrutiny Committee. Pensions Board, slightly different, because obviously the Fire Authority undertakes the scrutiny role of the local pensions board, because they're the ones who have the statutory responsibility there. And obviously Standards Committee is only considering member conduct issues, which wouldn't be within the remit of the Scrutiny Committee. So no problem with people sitting on both there.
There's only 3 on standards and only 4 on the local pension board. But say if you included that as well as all the other criteria, there is no member who would be eligible to sit on the new committee. So
no, we'd have to change the terms of reference for both of the others as well.
Yeah.
Can I also ask, Sal, if you were a champion of the service, that would probably affect you in some way with the scrutiny, wouldn't it? If it was a particular topic.
It would, but of course, at the moment, our champions are within the current scrutiny committee. So the likelihood is that we may have to rethink the way that we undertake that area of work.
Yeah.
But it's trying to bring the scrutiny committee that they're not just scrutinising issues on finance audit and asset management, so they can look at the wider remit of the authority.
Yeah.
I think I saw Councillor Brown indicating, but she's disappeared off my screen for a minute.
I think she's gone completely off. So for some, whether she had to go or something, I don't know. But she's not on the screen no more. So is there any other questions that anybody wants to ask Sally regarding that? I know it's going to be a bit of a headache because of the actual members and, well.
Yes, that'll need a fundamental overhaul, and I would propose that we take something to Fire Authority for their March meeting for implementation at the start of the new municipal year.
Right, yeah. So the recommendation that members consider the proposed new terms of reference for scrutiny attached to Appendix 1 to the report, and provide views and a recommendation to enable Fire and Rescue Authority consideration at their March meeting. So we got a proposal and a second it?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll second that then. Yeah. So do you want to take a vote, Sal? Or?
Yes, please, if I can. Yeah. So Councillor Brown has gone. Councillor Drake. Councillor Drake.
You were muted then, Pamela, but I did see 4 by your lips.
Okay. Councillor Evans.
4.
Councillor Hussey.
4.
Councillor Jarvie. Councillor Jarvie.
He's on mute, Sal.
We'll come back to him. Councillor Norton.
Support it.
Councillor Roberts.
Sorry, could I? Hello. Yeah, sorry, I lost connection, and I was going to ask you a question, and unfortunately, my mic had just disappeared.
Yeah, we lost you. We thought you'd left the meeting. Look, that's what we carried on.
So I've now managed to join on my phone. I was just going to suggest a slight amendment to the terms of reference if it's not too late.
It's too well. We've actually voted on it now. Yeah, so unfortunately, it's too late now. I would imagine, Sally, isn't it?
Well, I can always take the vote again if members want to hear Councillor Brown.
Yeah, it was just a very slight one. You know, on 1.1, I just wondered if you could add funding is utilised as economically, efficiently and effectively as possible because of the 3 E's for audit.
Yeah, I can add that one in.
That's great. Yeah, so, sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry about that. But
no, we saw you left the meeting. Look, that's why you saw you gone.
No, I put my hand up and then it decided.
Yeah, no, that's what we did say.
Yeah, I've got
Shaw's indicating as well now.
Yeah, thank you, Sally. Thank you, Chair. I don't think that's a material amendment, or ask for a revision of the motion. So, do you want to carry on with the voting, or are you happy to restart?
I'm happy to, provided members are happy.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
fine.
I'm happy.
Okay, Councillor Brown, in favour?
Yeah, thank you.
I've done Councillor Drake, Councillor Evans, Councillor Hussey, Councillor Jarvie. Is he back? No.
He's on mute, Sal. Councillor Jarvie, are you...
I'll come back to him at the end. Councillor Norton,
Other
I've
than
done.
that, thumbs up.
Councillor Roberts. She's gone, I think.
Yeah.
Councillor Shaw.
In favour.
Councillor Smith.
Support.
Councillor Spencer.
Okay.
I think. Yes.
Yep.
Councillor Thomas.
Oh.
Councillor Williams.
I think Joel have left.
Gone.
I think it's left, yeah.
Councillor Jarvie, are you back with us?
No, still on mute, Sal.
Okay, that's fine. That's unanimous of the members present.
There we are. Thank you for everyone. Item 10 now is a forward work programme. So most of you have probably read through all that. Is there anything you want to add to that, Sally? Or
no, that's fine. That's obviously the end of the meetings for the municipal year. So with any luck, we'll be starting with a brand new scrutiny committee with new terms of reference.
And now I think it'll be yours to sort out.
Absolutely.
You want to say something, Val?
Yes, please. Can I add an item to the work list, please?
Yes. We've got no other meetings this municipal year, though, Councillor Smith.
No. This is true delegation, This is from a local member. And local members pick up all sorts of things, but this is very, very pertinent to the fire authority.
You do want more work then, Val?
No, I think it might come to the chairman, Councillor Evans, because you have a great interest in the machines. I have been handed the registration details for a 1933 fire engine. And this gentleman wants to know what's happened to it, because during the course of its existence, he evidently handed it to Newport. But, I would like to try and satisfy his request. So I'd be very happy to pass on the gentleman's name and the information to whomever would like to pick it up.
Councillor Smith, do you want to send it to me?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
It may be we haven't got any records going back that far, but we can certainly have a look.
But I'm sure, the investigative bit of the chairman, he will face a challenge.
But also, we can put out, you may, if you put out to the wider circle, you may find that family have got previous photos of somebody had worked on it at that particular time.
Yeah.
You'd be quite astonished,
It's a remarkable thing to be brought in all seriousness from somebody who says, look, I had this at one time. I gave it to Newport. Where's it gone, Val? Well, I haven't got an idea. He's addressed it as well to the fire brigade. So it's going
okay. That's
Thank
fine.
you
If you
very
pass it here,
Yeah.
it may
Hopefully it's not tin cans now.
Well.
But anyway, the last item, I haven't got anything else. So it's nice, everyone, to see everybody and keep safe.
Have your
I think Ronnie got
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. It's just before we go, Sally, I sent you an email on Sunday. I just would like to know you've received it. That's all.
Yes, I have. I was going to get back to you once I've checked all the standing orders.
No, that's fine. We had an issue before where you weren't actually getting emails from the Bridgend account. That's all I needed to know. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Now she's got a scrutiny headache now. Well, that's it. All keep safe, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Yeah, see you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, officer.
Bye.